The lockdown due to coronavirus announced suddenly put the entire world in a standstill. And those stuck in various places included this wonderful couple with us, Mr. Arunabha and his wife, Dr. Prafullata Rajput. Incidentally, both were supposed to move out to Mumbai, which is today the worst affected by coronavirus. And they had to stay back in Goa due to the lockdown, but perhaps due to a purpose. Their staying back together resulted in helping large many migrant workers who were suddenly left without any support. So with us we have this wonderful couple who will tell us what exactly happened and how did they reach out to these hapless migrant workers who didn't have any help for themselves. So good afternoon sir, good afternoon ma'am. Welcome to this session of Uncovering India. To begin with, Arunabha sir, I would like to start with you. How was the impact of this lockdown first on you both, your family, how you got stuck up, and what finally transpired out of it?
Yeah, so we manage a social enterprise called Beyond Borders, and although we live in Goa, our office is in Mumbai. And my wife, who is a doctor, she has clinics in both Goa and in Pune. So it's quite a regular feature for us to travel to Mumbai and Pune once every month, at least, if not twice. And in March, first week of March, we had just returned to Goa. And we had plans to leave around the 20th of March, around that time. In fact, it was a weekend when we were planning to travel. And then this whole corona thing started developing. So we said, okay, let's wait for another week and then travel. And in that, the lockdown started. That week in itself, everything changed. And like many other people at that time, I think we kind of thought that this is going to tide over. It's maybe a week, maybe a couple of weeks, world will return to normal. But it didn't. So we were pretty much stuck in Goa. At that time, obviously, office work, our staff who traveled to our Mumbai office, we had to ask them not to travel anymore. So all of that impacted even our work because it slowed down.
So what happened next? Ma'am, you are a doctor, you have been handling this voluntary organization, and suddenly you must be having your own works, a lot of projects must be there, and suddenly you both got locked down. And then came the stage where suddenly you started getting distress calls from migrants who were in Goa at that time, and many of them were getting thrown out of their homes. Somebody didn't have money to buy essentials. There were no essentials available due to the sudden lockdown of including essential items. So I came to know that people started approaching both of you for help.
Yeah.
So how did it happen and how did you guys react to it?
So because we run a social enterprise, we work with different organizations in the social sector for a collective impact. So there are a few organizations out of which is Kiran Niketan, which is in Zuari Nagar, which we work with very closely. It's a women's empowerment space. Plus they have a community clinic which I and Arunabha had helped set up. And it's like a safe center where women and children come in, and then through that center they create awareness about different government health programs. So because they work with women so closely, they started getting calls from their community about not enough ration at home, not enough essentials. So they started communicating to us if there is something that can be done. And nothing was available. The shops were all closed. If we tried to get in touch with suppliers, all movement between the different states was closed, so they did not have enough stock. So it was a time when we were trying to figure out how to help these people.
Well, I'm sure you must be also not having adequate stocks because you were not prepared for it. You
Not
were
at
about
home.
to travel.
It
Yeah.
started from home because we received a call from a lady who would come to our home maybe a couple of times or 3 times in a week to do household chores. It started from that lady because she apparently, she was...
Yeah, she's pregnant and she's got 2 kids, and she's from Bihar originally. Her husband had gone to Bihar just before lockdown, and because of the whole unplanned structure and lockdown just coming in without the population really being prepared for it, he got stuck there and the trains had stopped. This woman over here was alone, pregnant, about 6 to 7 months pregnant, 2 kids with her. One is a toddler, one is about 6-7 years old. And then that woman called me within a week of lockdown that, "Madam, there is nothing in the house. I just have some oil and I don't know what to feed my kids." So it was difficult for us to hear that and think about that family like that, because she's been supporting us for a really long time. She's been working, and she said that, I had some money on me, so I went to get some stuff from the local grocer, but the rice which I would buy otherwise at 25 rupees a kilo is 50 rupees now, and I could just procure maybe a kilo of rice.
And she wanted to buy rice and dal, basic sustainable
Basic stuff.
food, but she could only buy rice because the price of rice itself had gone up.
So that was the only cash she had. So she said, "Is there something that you could do?" So I called her over, and managing all the social distancing thing, I made a small bag of things from my house, some dals and all what we had in our kitchen, just enough so that 1 or 2 days she can feed the kids. Meanwhile, then we got in touch with our contacts, got some more grocery stuff, got some vegetables. He went out, bought vegetables, and we kept that in a bag, in a basket, and asked her to pick that up. That's how it started.
And we also then started looking at what were the different things that the government had planned, because if this was an unplanned lockdown, she was not going to be the only person who's going to get affected. There will be so many other people.
Yeah, so we got
That
in touch
pregnant
with
lady.
Yeah.
So we got in touch with the we spoke to people who are in the administration, like the Sarpanch and people working at Zilla Parishad who we know as friends, and we asked them what is it that we could do for these people through the government machinery, because we can't be supporting everybody. That's when we came to know that at that time, that first week of lockdown, there wasn't much for the migrant population. There were things that government was doing, but
for the
For the local
population.
local poor population, and they were getting essentials, but the migrant population was asked to provide with their ration cards, with their Aadhaar cards, and because they did not have local Aadhaar cards, they were not getting things. And once we gave this woman few things from our kitchen, she then called up. She was very
The
thankful.
word must have gone out by then
Yes.
that you are providing
Exactly.
this stuff.
So some people whom she knew, about 7-8 families, they were facing the same issues, and they got in touch if something can be done. That's when
Our
got
machinery
issues
started
start.
moving, because then I got in touch with not only government, because we realized that there is not going to be significant movement from the government. It's going to be slow because the government themselves were starting to react to lockdowns, and we realized that the migrant population is going to suffer.
We are going to be the last priority.
Yeah, last priority.
Yeah.
So,
Plus, we were
yeah.
also we were also told that you send the woman to the shelter. Now, a pregnant lady with 2 kids, the shelter is not equipped to handle women. No, it wasn't really equipped to handle women and children. At that time, sending a pregnant woman with 2 children to a shelter did not really make sense, and she didn't want to lose her room. If she would have left her room, then there is a possibility that she wouldn't have got that again when she wanted. So she was unwilling to move from there.
So then we started getting in touch with friends who own supermarkets, or people who we had earlier contacted for bulk items, because when I went to the supermarket to buy 25 kilos of rice to feed 7 families, the person said, "I am sorry, I don't have that kind of stock anymore, because there is no travel, the borders are closed, and there's not enough stock coming in. And whatever stock is there at the distributor, that is being given out to the locals first." So everywhere we went, we started hearing this, that there is stock, but it is meant for the locals first. The migrants are going to get it only if there's anything remaining. So we realized that this is starting to grow slightly out of proportion, and that's when we started talking to the district administration and also to volunteer organized north of Goa, Panjim being the capital. There's a lot of movement. Decisions are taken over there. The discussions happen. Work on the ground happens faster. So we started reaching out to more people to understand what's going on with the rest of the state. And that's when we became mainstreamed with a much larger collective of NGOs, volunteers, people who are just giving their time, and we realized that the migrant issue is a very large issue. It's a crisis. And we also realized that Zuarinagar is going to get affected, which is the area where we work. Not in the first maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, but right after that it will get impacted. And that's when we started receiving calls from Zuarinagar.
So, Zuarinagar being a very packed slum area, and reaching out, how did you reach out to the population there? Was it difficult to identify, and movement was also blocked at that time, restriction was there. So how did you manage to reach out to them?
So we have been working with Zuarinagar for over 3 years now. We already have a legacy there, and we have done outreach programs there. So it was easy. We would receive calls. They have our numbers. They have the number of the person who was involved in the outreach. That's how we started getting calls. So that person, that is our staff from there, and Kiraniketan staff, they got together, put the list of people together so that they can streamline the movement of.
So then, when finally things started moving, and you, I suppose, also got into providing with sanitary napkins and the women, because you started taking care of the women, I came to know.
Yeah.
So then, how did you start taking care of the women's, especially the sanitation part? How did that come into the picture?
So what happened is, while doing this work, once our things at the Zuarinagar community started going smoothly, then from different citizen organizations and citizen volunteers, we started getting calls about clusters of people stuck elsewhere. So Zuarinagar being one big area, Zuarinagar, and being closer to Vasco, it was easier for us because the cluster was huge and we were already working there. But these tiny clusters, which were spread all across South Goa, help to reach the help over there was very difficult because people were not aware of them. So once we started getting that, there was this big cluster from Madhya Pradesh, which was stuck when the first Shramik train left to MP. That's when this cluster reached Madgaon, and they couldn't get into that train. So the Konkan railway has a yard at the back. Over there, in that yard, these people were camping. And camp means it was open to air camp. There were no huts, nothing. They had just made one hut, a makeshift one for all the kids of the whole group. It was a group of about 70-75 people, and it was clusters of families. So then there were women there were children of all age groups. And when we visited there, we realized that health issue is a big issue with them. There were 3 women who were pregnant, various stages of pregnancy. Since the lockdown, their medication had stopped. There was one woman who was very near to her delivery, and they weren't sure what's going to happen because there was no medication. She wasn't connected to any doctor, and already in the same group, about 3 weeks back, or 15 days, 3 weeks back, not sure of the date, one of the women had delivered a baby in a street near Marcel. So the situation did not look very comfortable for them. What we did is we took those women to Hospicio because we thought it's better that they get checked and they get their medicines. Government has a very, very strong ANC program, and if they get into that program, it's the best way. Always working, coordinating with the administration helps, because the reach of administration is a lot more than what a common man can reach. So we took them there. Then we saw that kids, they used to roam around with no shoes, nothing. They had cuts in their feet by the glass and all thrown there. Beer bottles and all you'll find everywhere. So that's how we started getting involved in the medical things. So we provided them with medicines, with basic deworming, with things for fungal infections and all. And then I checked with the women what they were doing for their menstrual hygiene. Obviously, they couldn't get anything from the shops at that time. And
they
that
had
was
no
the
money.
lowest.
They had no money. By then, we were looking at maybe a month and a half into the lockdown. They had no money, they had no work, no income, and they had spent all their money maybe about 15 days before.
Plus it comes in the last of essentials. So first essential is food. Till the time they're able to feed their kids and themselves, it's more important. So then we started distributing pads because we realized that that's a necessity which they won't be able to pay for.
So what thoughts come to your mind when you look back at this 3 months of tribulation. How do you look back at it, and what lessons did it taught both of you?
It shows that there is humanity and people support each other. That's the first thing that we realized. Everywhere we went, if we felt short in something, there were other people standing there to help us out. If there were other people who were falling short, there was someone else. There was us, so it was easier. And second most important thing I think was when multiple organizations and citizens and governments coordinate, then the impact is a lot higher. It's easier to reach the crowd.
Yeah, I would take off from what you left it at. I think one of the things that I very clearly understood is that the government wants to function on their own. And that whenever this happens and the government does not recognize the role that can be played by people on the ground, which could either be NGOs or even day-to-day common people, because common people were the ones who were going out and feeding people in their own neighborhoods, like us. We started in the same way. We started feeding a cluster of people who were working at our home. So did everyone else. So the role that common people and citizens were playing, once you don't take that into consideration and you want to create some sort of a policy-driven, system-driven, process-driven thing for a crisis, for managing a crisis, you fall flat on your face.
They wanted to show they were ready, but they weren't, because everything was unplanned. So I don't think they had thought through the process of how they are going to reach.
Yeah, and then you want to start using organizations that you already have, existing organizations, but none of these organizations are built to fight a crisis.
I think while something like this comes up, which is a crisis, then government should involve regular citizens in making decisions. So there has to be a platform where we can voice our ideas. From different sectors you can get different ideas, and using that things can be